Hi, welcome everyone. This channel exists to help you inspire you, encourage you, and grow your bookkeeping business. I'm joined today by the CEO and founder of Risk Desk, Jock Wols, and today the topic is we're going to be talking about social engineering and wire transfer fraud. Now, we have an association called the Digital Bookkeeper Association, and our members have access to a public directory. Now, with that comes risks, right? Because we want the directory to be easy to access for business owners and to be able to find a bookkeeper as easily as possible, that means there are some bad actors as well. There's people that come into the directory, pretend to be a business owner with the intention to actually scam or steal money from our members or from even their clients. So, Jock, I know that you've dealt with a lot of wire transfer fraud and you've seen probably the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I wanted to hear from you some of the things that we should look out for. And I don't know if you have any crazy horror stories to tell us about it.
So I don't know, where should we start? How much time do we have? So yeah, thanks for having me on here, Jaime. Excited to share some insights with the audience. Yeah, social engineering fraud, it is just not slowing down. So with our own clients, with prospective clients, we just continue to see them being impacted by these cyber scams. And if you kind of take a step back, compared to 10 years ago, social engineering fraud has really allowed cyber criminals to target the small business community. So 10 years ago, the typical type of cyber threat represented a data breach or a hacking event and a loss of information, right? That's what you kind of read about. Now it is cyber criminals being able to target small businesses through impersonation, through phishing, through spear phishing, through all kinds of scams. And they've got a couple different outcomes. You already hit on one of the main ones, one of the main objectives, which relates to wire transfer fraud, basically tricking a target into taking a certain action. And that action means wire funds to this account or change bank account information in an accounts payable system. So, and usually when I'm faced with these situations of our own clients or prospective clients, I always kind of talk to them and say, hey, it's not you. These guys are really, really sophisticated. They've got the playbook down. It doesn't really have to do with education. It is, you just get tricked into taking this action because you're working at 100 miles an hour. You maybe have some lax processes, procedures. Maybe you didn't know about it, right? So there's a lot that kind of goes on with social engineering fraud, wire transfer fraud.
Yeah, and Jack, one of the things that you've always say that has stuck with me is that this happens to everybody, or not to everybody, but it can happen to just about anybody. It has nothing to do with intelligence. And a lot of times it just has to do with the scammer catching you at the right time, or really, I guess, at the wrong time, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there's different layers of scams too, and different layers of sophistication. So if you, kind of going back to your example about, or value that you provide through the book, through the directory, that's intended to basically disclose to the public and say, hey, you need a bookkeeper. Here's a resource. Tap into this. This person may fit into your industry, may fit into your practice area profile. Reach out to them. It's a great marketing tool. Cyber criminals look at this as, oh, here's a couple leads that we can kind of pursue. So it's like almost that no good deed goes unpunished. And so in those type of instances, if you plug that into a scam, that phishing attack looks like or represents the cyber criminal targeting a common group of individuals or keepers, got their scripts down, and they basically email them en masse. Maybe there's some phone calls too, but it's usually electronic communication, and they target that same kind of group. So it's basically just scraping the internet for leads and then saying, hey, we're going to target you. So that is sort of the not original type of phishing scam, but that is what you probably think of most commonly, right? Getting an email, click here, do that, right? It just comes from random email address or something that looks sort of legitimate, but it is to me, that represents the quasi-original type of phishing scam.
And I've seen a couple of different type of scams. One where they directly try to, it's the classic refund scam where they overpay you and then you have to pay the money back, and then you're out of the money that you paid back, but then also the bank pulls the money. So you're out like double essentially because the money was never actually there.
Exactly. And then let me just jump in there. And those often represent a more sophisticated scam. Meaning you're actually dealing with an individual who's posing as a client. and says, hey, I want to hire you as a bookkeeper. Here's the documentation. Here are my books. Let's work through the engagement letter. And then when they get to the engagement letter stage, they say they sign the engagement letter. They may even push back on it, and then they say, okay, send me the invoice, and the invoice gets sent, and then all of a sudden it's overpaid, right? And so that is a very sophisticated, very specific type of scam, meaning it's almost like a one-on-one versus that sort of that mass marketed where they email everyone and say, hey, click on this or pay this, and you kind of get tricked into it. So that means there's more effort, there's more patience required by the cybercriminal, which to me is always kind of the amazing thing that they're very patient, and they work on these scams they've really refined them over a period of time.
You bring up the word patient, and that actually makes me think of the other scam that I've seen very common, where they rush you into something and they make you make a quick decision. I think about a scam where they reach out to some of our Digital Bookkeeper Association members and they say, hey, I need a bookkeeper. They schedule a consultation like a week out, for example, and all of a sudden the Zoom link that the bookkeeper sent doesn't work, right? Or I say in quotes, doesn't work, because they claim it doesn't. And they say, hey, I need you to join me. Here's my link. Use my link. And if you don't join right away, they're sending an email again that says, hey, are you joining? Here's my link. And they're just trying to get you to just make a quick decision and not think about the risks that come behind that.
Yeah, and they play on or they use things like it's coming from a sense of authority. It's coming from a trusted partner. It's coming from hey, here's a new business opportunity. You want to do right by the client. They say the link doesn't work. You're not going to question that, right? So you're not going to say, well, no, you're technically deficient, right? So and then you kind of get, like you said, that sense of urgency gets kind of baked into these scams, and then boom, you click it, and then it deploys the virus or the ransomware, or it kind of gives that cybercriminal access to that system. And in those cases, it is a breach. It is basically, hey, they want you to, that action that you take by clicking that link downloads a virus, downloads a ransomware, or gives them access, and then that's how they start their attacks.
Yeah. And so with those are two of the most common scams, but you might, as a bookkeeper watching, you might think, well, I send my invoices to the QuickBooks. How can somebody overpay? Believe it or not, that QuickBooks allows you to edit how much that client pays. Yeah. I can send an invoice for $300 and that client can accidentally add another zero and send me a payment for $3,000. Yep. And it can be edited. It's kind
happened on Friday to one of our clients, but she's very savvy, and she's like, I got to tell you this, I'm dealing with a scammer, and this is not that it's fun, but she's like, obviously you're not going to fall for this, but this is going to be great material. So, but that's exactly the scenario you're talking about, Jaime, where the engagement letter was signed, invoice was sent, it was overpaid, and you got to be aware that when it's overpaid, they have to deliberately overpaid. They have to edit that amount. So that's the first red flag, right? So it's a deliberate action. Then they say, oh, hey, keep, like you were alluding, keep the difference, wire the balance to us, external from QuickBooks. And so when it's the first client, or when it's that client, and you just sign them, and you want to, they tee up other information in terms of their bank balance being low, and they have to make payroll or things like that. And this stuff already anyway, because you looked at their books, then you feel like, okay, well, I want to do right by the client. I don't want to be the problem. I want to be the solution, or part of the solution. And then you bend your rules. So don't do that. Just say, hey, going into this, if there's a request for either have it processed through the same payment vendor, and just recognize that QuickBooks, they front the funds. They don't clear them until 4, 5, 6, 7 days later. And that's when, if you've wired the money before that, external to QuickBooks, that money's gone, and then they're going to claw back the funds that weren't sufficient on the client's from the client's account.
Yeah. And Jock, I asked you to be in this video, and I wanted to do this video to bring awareness to this, because it can happen to anybody. But how often do you see something like this happen? Is this really that common?
Yeah, so until the call on Friday, it was actually a little quiet the preceding 3 months, but pretty much for a 9-month stretch, I got a call every single month from someone who had an issue or someone who was faced with this particular issue. It was just, so over a 12-month span, it was 9 out of 12 months, someone called me and said, hey, I've got existing client or someone who's like, hey, I need to talk to you about this, right? So it's, and compared to the prior 12 months, that had accelerated. So it's, like I said, it's just not slowing down, unfortunately. And that's why, you and I have talked about this a ton. And so we almost feel like a broken record, but it's this one thing that you just cannot ignore with your practice, and you want to protect yourself and you want to protect your client. And so there are certain processes and procedures you can adopt that can help you not eliminate, but mitigate that risk.
Jock, we'll close with this. It's busy season for bookkeepers. It's tax season. And I think there's times where this might be the best time for somebody to come to us because they know it's busy and we're going to maybe not be as aware because we're just trying to get things done. What do you give, what is the one piece of advice you would give to a bookkeeper that maybe hasn't gone through this yet, but something to look out for? What are some of those red flags they can look out for?
Yeah, I mean, we touched on a couple of things like sense of urgency. If anything relates to, hey, wire funds here, the new bank account, if there's never been a transaction between or with that bank account, that should put you on high alert. Just slow down, call the requester from an independently sourced number and say, hey, I've got this request to wire funds, or change bank account information in an accounts payable system. You just can't get around that. You need to just sort of think about it. And again, it doesn't have anything to do with, they're just good. Just recognize that scam exists, and then learn from others. Learn through these videos, learn through others in the bookkeeping community. If someone says something about, hey, the directory has been, someone at the directory contacted me, pay some attention to that. And it's not just the DBA. It's like every directory is impacted by this. So it's not DBA specific. You see it across everything. So yeah, I mean, the education does help.
Yeah, and just staying educated and always kind of staying on top of having that top of mind that this can happen, right? Totally. Well, Jock, thank you so much for joining. And you, to the viewers, thank y'all so much. If you want more content like this, if you want to join the Digital Bookkeeper Association, you can join for as little as $9 a month. There will be a link under this video in the description. If you want to hear more from Jock, if you want to schedule a time to talk with him about your insurance policy, whether that's errors and omissions, cyber liability, general liability, or really any other kind of policy, we'll also have a link below under this video. Thank y'all so much for watching.
Awesome.